Hi, I'm Sandy Ray, founder of Sandra E. Ray CPA, where we alleviate financial headaches so that you can create a bigger impact. Today, I want to talk about flexible work options. And when we think about flexible work options these days, we're mainly talking about remote work, and it's not going away. Now, some people are embracing it, and some people are not so happy with it. But the past few years have shown that this is not going away. It's something we're going to have to accept. And within your organization, you need to determine if this is something that you want to have remote workers or hybrid workers or on-site workers. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the data and some of the pros and cons. But first, I want to start with bringing you into looking at this from two perspectives. First, I want you to look at it from the job seeker. The job seeker data is going to show us that they generally tend to want to work remotely for many different reasons. While within our organizations, we may not necessarily be able to accommodate that. So let's talk a little bit about this and see what information we can provide to you so that you can make the best informed decision for your organization. When we're talking about remote working, we're talking about the convenience of not commuting. We're also talking about the organization being able to maybe relocate, or somebody maybe who wants to work in a less populated area can do that and still work. Job seekers also may have health concerns where they don't want to come into an office or they can't come into an office for mobility reasons. For our organizations, we want to look at, can we have remote workers or hybrid workers, or do people need to be on site? And is that our manager preference or is that a requirement of the job? For example, if you have somebody who works directly with constituents in a clinical setting, maybe you have to do an examination. I mean, that has to be done face to face. But there are lots of other organizational positions that maybe not require that face to face on a day-to-day basis. Now, one advantage of remote work is that it can open you up to a huge pool, I mean, potentially globally, of talented people for your organization. So let's get into the data. When we're talking about, and I went to Idealist, which is a job posting board for nonprofit organizations, and they have done a survey and based on the data of the job posting boards in their website, and they're reporting that when job seekers are searching on location for a job, over 88% are looking for remote work. Only 7% are looking for hybrid, and 5% are looking for an on-site position. So our job seekers, they are wanting remote work. On the other hand, when we look at our organizations, 43% want their workers to be on-site full-time. 38% have hybrid listings, and 19% are fully remote. Now, 19 versus 88%, this is a big disconnect, and it's something that we need to consider when we're looking for talented people in our organizations. Location is not the only factor that people are using for wanting to, or that we have data on for remote work. Some other factors are role type. As I said before, some roles tend to be more, lean themselves to be more of an on-site, and others tend to be more remote. So for organizations that have to be like an on-site position, we already talked about like a clinical position where you're working directly with a constituent, but facilities and maintenance, 90 to 100% of those are on-site location. Education tends to lead to be face-to-face, especially in public or private schools. They're seeing 83 to 93% of those workers are on-site. When we're looking for roles that can be performed anywhere, some in-person responsibilities, for example, fundraising and development, tend to be hybrid. 37 to 43% tend to be hybrid. Legal tends to be 33 to 47% hybrid. Marketing, 33 to 41% are hybrid. And then the roles that tend to be more remote, such as research, we can go up to 60% of those listings. Business development, up to 52% are remote, and information technology, up to 44% are remote. Now, in addition to job role, they looked at job level. So the various levels in your organization. And it came out that the more clerical, general job tended to be more on site. So breaking down the data by job level, if you're an associate or assistant or coordinator, those people tend to be working on site up to 68%. Where if you're on a manager level or upper management, those roles tend to be up to 44% remote. And if you reach the head of the organization, up to 57% of those jobs are remote. Now, one data point that they looked at, which is organization size. If you have organizations with 1,000 or more staff, those tended to be 23% remote, where under 1,000 tended to be 27%, or even 1 to 10%. 1 to 10 employees, excuse me, were at 27%. So there's no big disconnect there in organization size. But organization type, there were some big differences. For instances, like think tanks and policy institutes tended to be 43% remote, while membership organizations tended to be 32% remote. And again, some of our more on-site, like maybe schools or clinics, tended to be 22% remote. So now we've talked about some of the data. Let's get into some of the pros and cons of working remotely. Of course, the first pro of remote work is access to talent. You have that bigger candidate pool. But on the flip side, we have to talk about navigating the different legal requirements of having employees in different states or even in a different country. Another pro is lower operational costs. We do not have to have a physical presence anywhere if that's your type of organization. So we don't have the costs associated with that. The con is the inconsistent work environments. You can't force people to work remotely and then, go to a co-hatch or whatever kind of thing. Maybe you can, but everybody's work environment is going not to be consistent. They might have different computers unless you provide those computers. They're definitely going to have a different workspace. So those are some things that you have to consider, that everybody's workspace is going to be different. Maybe their technology is going to be different, that kind of thing. Another pro for remote work is easier business growth. Because you don't have a physical office, you don't have to expand into a bigger space. If you add more staff, that's easier to add people to your organization with less overhead. The con is it's harder to communicate when everybody are working remotely. There's physical barriers to getting together. Zoom is not always the best option for certain types of meetings or brainstorming or events or those kinds of things. So you have to consider that. Another pro is some people say there's less drama or likelihood of turbulent drama within the organization. That can happen, remotely as well. So I'm not so sure that that's a pro or a con. It just happens differently. So where do we go from here? While there are many positives of working remotely and increasing or hybridly for our employees, this is something that you're going to have to look at for your organization. We want to consider the work-life balance of our employees. We want to look at interruptions or distractions. Is that more likely to happen in a remote situation or on your on-site presence, your physical presence? We want to look at the mental health of our employees. There's studies that show that remote work can improve mental health, but there are also those studies that show that there's some isolation there too that might not be great for everybody's mental health. So we have to work at team building, which is harder with remote working. But like I said, ultimately, this decision is up to you and how your organization operates. I hope that we have brought to you today some things to consider about what job seekers are looking for and opening up your talent pool versus the needs of the organization, some cost savings potentially. So hopefully we've been able to help you make the best decision that you can for your team. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Remember that creating a bigger impact starts with stopping the nonsense. If you're dealing with nonsense in your nonprofit organization, we'd love to help you cut through the noise.